Minister, you outlined that the importance of having this bill passed before the end of the year, and I'm sure you'll receive wide support, but not without reservation, I'm sure, from many of us in the House. You have highlighted the scale of spending this year and the facility now to provide in 2021 €10.8 billion in capital spend. And that is a mind-boggling figure when we think of the last number of years where we were trying to close the budget deficit gap from a couple of billion down to maybe 1 and then down to 0.5. And before COVID came along, you know, we were running a very, very tight ship. And all of a sudden, in this year that has just passed and in the year to come, we now are borrowing very extensively. And I think Deputy Shortall already highlighted the difficulties that that has brought in terms of making sure that we are, I suppose, spending strategically well and that we have good procurement procedures and that we are getting value for money. And there's no doubt that COVID sprung incredible surprises on the economy, on our healthcare sector in particular, on government naturally. And we have made a lot of decisions without a doubt and made a lot of probably ones that we would not make if looking at them a second time around. And it's interesting that she highlighted the issue of that ventilators issue. I had some dealings with HSE procurement over the past year on behalf of companies who were trying to supply products and medicines, in fact, to COVID supports. And it was incredibly difficult to get any engagement at all, I would say, from the HSE. And I have brought this up on my time in the COVID committee, the difficulty of trying to get at key decision makers. And I think Deputy Shortall was alluding to people with interest, commercial interests who are trying to get there. I know many people who are trying to get there because they had the interests of the country at mind and at heart, people who had widespread contacts down in the Far East in terms of the procurement of PPE and who offered their services, and they were not called upon. So I think there are lessons to be learned about that. We are also still going through the issues of Brexit, and they are very significant issues for the country, absolutely. But I think one of the things that we do know, whatever way the Brexit deal rolls out, is that we are going to have a very different relationship with the UK after. And certainly we're going to have very significant transport issues. And within that, we've seen the issues of the UK land bridge being bypassed potentially for trying to get direct access to the European continent. And thankfully, services are going to start from Rosslare Airport through DFDS. But I haven't heard anything about government support in terms of capital supports for the port of Rosslare, nor for the port of Waterford, which is a bulk port. And I think the South East has the fastest sea routes to the European continent, and I cannot understand why I'm not hearing from government about initiatives in terms to try and support additional scaling of services from these ports. And I think that's something you need to put into your planning minister. Also, in terms of health planning, I brought up the issue of a second cath lab with the Taoiseach here this morning, and indeed I brought it up with the Taoiseach last week. And I would remind you that we are now into 4 calendar years in terms of delivery of a €5 million capital spend. And at the present time, we are now going through a 4-month Office of Government procurement review on a €5 million spend. And I might basically compare that to the decision that was made earlier this year to provide €350 million in surge capacity in a private hospital contracts deal, a deal that was brokered, I think, in less than 3 weeks. And I think, again, we must look in terms of how we are doing our business. And I think this is going to fall probably largely to your department in the coming year with oversight for this money. But we can't say on the one hand, that we are going to be looking at all the minutiae of spending and do that for a €5 million deal, and then for a multi-million, tens of million euro deal, we ask the question, how could somebody be awarded a contract for 14 million who has no expertise in an area? So I think these are some things that are going to have to be looked at. From my own perspective, I don't want to get into pork barrel politics, but I do want to mention just some things in terms of the regional development and some of the national development as well. I think it has now been properly recognised that we need major funding within the mental health sector. And I think particularly in the South East, we have a very poor service in terms of child, adult mental health supports, certainly in the community. Absolutely none in University Hospital Waterford. We're totally dependent on the child, adult mental health services in CUH. and we were promised a block. And I think we have a problem in terms of hospital groups, Minister. And I've said this before. We have money being channeled in to one central position, and out of that the money is supposedly to be given on a kind of an equitable basis. And yet if you look at where Tralee General Hospital is at the moment, University Hospital Kerry, where you look where that hospital is at the moment, where you look where University Hospital Waterford has been in terms of trying to get funding from the centre. And as I said this morning, an announcement of 12 new consultant posts made by the HSE in Waterford recently, which haven't even been approved by the Consultant Appointments Commission. So they're a minimum 12 to 2 years away. So why announce them? And I think we need to get away from this spin. I have thanked you previously, and I do again, for the funding for the North Quays, but that will not be the GDP closure, driving to close the gap in GDP in terms of the South East, the ground that we have lost. And I think that is going to be in largely the educational sector. And therefore we need significant capital monies given to the third level. And I know the TUSE proposal is being discussed at the present time. And what I would say about that, that has to be of the quantum and scale that is required to drive the South East region. We do not have a national university in the South East, unlike all of the other regions of the country. And therefore we need this to solve that problem, that educational deficit problem for us. And so I hope that will be given the attention that it requires. I think also housing has been mentioned before, and I welcome your announcement recently regarding the affordable housing scheme. But I think we need to understand there's an absolutely huge number of people who have fallen into the trap of being outside of any support from the local authority, and yet who are finding it impossible to save and get onto the property ladder. And I would agree with some of the deputies previously that we have to get back to looking at local authority providing some housing mix, not just handing tenders over here or there. We did have that expertise years ago. It can be developed again, and I think we need to look at that. But I think most importantly, in terms of this 10.8 allocation, 10.8 billion capital allocation, we will need to see transparent and equitable decision making around it, Minister. We can no longer have these out of the blue announcements that something is going to be funded for 50 and 100 million when people are looking, because it does create disharmony in the state. And I think now more than ever, and post-COVID, we have to work together. We are all in this together. So I would plead with you, Minister, in terms of your thinking, to secure the tangible assets of our state into the future. I'm thinking of our agricultural sector, our aviation sector, which has taken an incredible hammering, and we are going to need that in order to get back up and going. Our enterprise sector as well, and innovation, they have to be supported. Technology and telecommunications, and also arts and culture. And hopefully we can get back to supporting these sectors, Minister. But what I want to see most of all, I suppose, after this bill is done and in the new year, is a more transparent way of doing business and evidence-based research to back what we are doing, and then absolutely value for money in the process that we are undertaking. Thank you.